presented with are part of God's plan to form you into something else, something stronger, something more noble, something more honorable, something more content with what they have. But, forming's not easy, and in the Bible, one of the ways that the Bible talks about formation is a potter in clay. And we talked about what it looks like for a potter to form clay. In the beginning of forming clay, there's a lot of slamming and pounding and kneading and molding before you get to the fine work. And that is a part of formation as well. But the thing about formation for us, my wife had this really good analogy I'm going to steal right now. But, our house, really popular right now is the idea of minimalism. You guys know what that is? It's like you walk into a house and there's like a table with like a bowl on it. And then everything else is white and pristine and clear, okay? That's not our house. We're not minimalists, all right? Our house is filled with art and pictures, and to me, I feel like every one of our walls is a different color because my wife likes color, so there's a lot of color everywhere, and it's filled with things. And when people come in, to be honest, when people come into our house for the first time, they just want to walk around and see all the things that my wife has all around the house. And she said, my wife loves to thrift, okay? So if you compliment my wife on anything, she's not going to say thank you first. She's going to tell you how much she saved on it, okay? I really like your shirt. I got it for free at so-and-so. Or, that's what she does. And so she thrifts. And so anywhere, and I mean this, anywhere in the world that we are, all right, she will find something that sells something that someone else threw away, and then she finds treasures. All right, so it could be a little vase this big. It could be a piece of art. Like we brought artwork home when we've been abroad, and our house now, over the course of 26 years that we've been married, is now filled with these little treasures from all over the world that she bought at thrift stores, okay? Now here's the thing. You can't make a house be like that overnight. It takes 26 years of thrifting for the house to feel like that, for it to feel like a museum, all right? You can't do it. And as a matter of fact, and this is what she said, sometimes you go into homes and they've tried to do this, but you can tell they just spent a ton of money, like in 1 week, and it almost feels soulless, all right? And the reason that is because every one of these treasures that my wife bought, she haggled over. All right, she put it down, and then she went somewhere else, and then she came back. Sometimes she left the store, and then a week later, she's like, nope, I think I do like that. And then she comes back, and she gets it. Our house is filled with treasures that have been thought about, that have been placed in myriads. They're cracked. I have 4 boys and a little girl who is the CEO of the 4 boys. And so our house has broken stuff and cracked stuff and faded stuff, and it all looks good. It's amazing. I could never do it. That's kind of like our own formation. God can't form you into this beautiful piece of artwork, this thing that is strong and unique and filled with experiences from all over life. He can't do that overnight. He does that over the period of a lifetime. All right? And over a period of a lifetime, you become something beautiful that God forms, if you allow it. In the first week, we talked about the idea that we're formed by what we follow. All right? And so if you're following something other than Jesus, you're not following Jesus. All right? So if you want to be formed by Jesus, then you have to follow. You have to be his disciple. And we talked about what that looks like. Last week, we talked about thinking. We're formed by what we think. All right? You can't, like I think Greg alluded to, you can't just turn off your emotions. Your emotions are formed by how you've thought over the course of your life. And so if you want to change how you feel, you want to change how you behave, then you're going to have to change how you think. All right? And what you allow into your mind, what you look at, what you spend your time doing and thinking. If all you do is watch entertainment, then that's how you're going to be formed. You're going to be formed by popular media. If all you do is look through social media and your phone, that's what's forming you. And you're going to be formed into what social media wants you to be. All right? So we talked about thinking. Today, we're going to talk about the concept of waiting, all right? Yeah, this isn't fun. I'm just going to say it right now. I walked into my gym the other day, and usually when I walk into the gym, I'm not the most social person at the gym. I mean, I know a lot of people at the gym, but that's not I don't go there to talk, all right? I go there to work, all right? And that's like my escape. And so I walk in, it's like when I walk in, I have my headphones on. I'm not, I'm kind of, I get very purposeful. But I walked in, and there were two young trainers behind the counter. I didn't know them at all. I know a lot of the trainers. I didn't know these two. And I walked in, and I scanned my ID, and I'm ready to go. And they go, hold on real quick. What is your favorite dinosaur? And I was just like, you're messing up everything inside of me right now. But they were young and cool, and I was like, okay, I want to give a good answer here, And like in that moment, now here's the thing, I've got a lot of kids. I'm just this close to being a paleontologist myself because of how much focus my kids have had on dinosaurs over the course of their life. But I'll tell you right now, when they asked me what's your favorite dinosaur, I couldn't even think of a single dinosaur that ever existed in that moment. And so I'm thinking, and I'm like, and then finally I go, I think my favorite dinosaur is a Triceratops. It's a classic dinosaur. The guy trainer, he just kind of goes like this. And so and then I walk away. But then as I'm walking, this is where I'm neurotic, okay? As I'm walking away, I was like, why did I say Triceratops? That's not my favorite dinosaur. It's a stupid answer. Why did I give that answer? Like, I want to give an answer. I want a dinosaur that runs and that's fast and that's, a predator. That's what I want, not some hulking elephant with horns, and I couldn't shake it. I couldn't shake it. I'm working out thinking about, they think I'm a Triceratops now. I'm not a Triceratops. And then in my mind, I go, you know what? I'm going to go back over there. And I'm going to tell them, hey, I gave you the wrong answer. I'm not a Triceratops. Now, luckily, I didn't do that. I just kind of lived with the discomfort of my answer. But then, after I'm done working out, I'm driving home, and I'm like, oh, why was I going to go correct that answer? Like, what was I thinking? Why is that? And I realized this is how neurotic I am at curating the way that I look and the way that people think about me and the way that people feel about me. I want it to be exactly the right thing. And, and it ties in to what we're talking about today, because the reality is, if you're going to trust God, if you're going to follow him throughout the course of your life, you're going to be consistently in positions of discomfort that he's asking you to stop trying to control, but to just trust him, to just wait, to allow him to do what he's going to do without you trying to fix it. Go ahead and open your Bibles to Genesis chapter 4. And I've been recently reading some books about the biblical theology of prayer. And essentially what that means is to go through each book of the Bible and look at every time prayer is mentioned, and is there kind of a theme about prayer. And I came across Genesis chapter 4, verse 25, and this is soon after Cain and Abel. Cain killed Abel, and Cain had to wander the earth. And in verse 25 of chapter 4, it says, Adam was intimate with his wife again, and she gave birth to a son named Seth. For she said, God has given me offspring in place of Abel, since Cain killed him. A son was born to Seth also, and he named him Enosh. This is the part I want you to pay attention to. At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. And it's very interesting, this phrase, at that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. This is the first time in the Bible that prayer is ever mentioned. This is the first time it talks about people praying. And it talks about it in the context of calling on the name of the Lord. Now, throughout the Bible, the idea of calling on the name of the Lord, evoking the name of the Lord becomes a very, very important theme. But this is the first time it's mentioned. And it's in response to something that happened in chapter 3. So Adam and Eve are evicted from the garden for eating the apple, and God is explaining now what their lot is going to be. And in explaining the fact that Adam was going to struggle against the earth, and that Eve was going to now have childbearing pains and kind of the consequences of taking matters into their own hands, he also gives them this prophecy of hope. And in chapter 3, verse 15, it says, I will put hostility, this is talking about the snake now. Now he's cursing, God is giving the consequences to the serpent. I will put hostility between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. He will strike your head, and you will strike his heel. This is the first messianic prophecy in the Bible. All right, this is widely, almost universally considered by both Jewish and Christian theologians to be the first prophecy about the Messiah. All right, that he will crush evil. All right, is basically what it's saying. And evil will also strike him. And so it's Jesus coming to end all death, but in the process, he is crucified. All right, this is that first prophecy about this. This gives rise to the hope that God is going to set things right. Though man messed everything up, though they took matters into their own hands, and there is now a fallen world, a creation that now must labor against itself, and a mankind, a humankind that must labor against itself, God is going to send a Savior. All right? Now, you can imagine if you're hearing this at the time, you're like, okay, so how long are we going to wait for this? You know, and when Cain and Abel were born, I think people hoped that was going to be the solution. That one of them was going to be the solution. And then Cain kills Abel. And then Seth is born, but Seth is not the solution. And then Enosh is born, and Enosh is not the solution. And then it says, at that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord. All right, and so the idea here is that after 4 generations of there being no Messiah, people began to cry out to God, hey, when are you going to fulfill this promise? And so much of prayer in the Bible, when you see this calling on the name of the Lord, so much of it is people reminding God of his promises and asking him, how much longer? When will you fulfill this? When will this come true? And God's answer, so much of the time, is wait. You have to wait. Go ahead and turn to Habakkuk now. And we're going to stay this is a tiny little book. We're going to stay in Habakkuk for the rest of the day. But Habakkuk is a prophet who comes to God. He basically comes to God on the walls of Jerusalem. And this book is this conversation that Habakkuk has between himself and God while on the walls of Jerusalem. So this is generations and generations later. All right? We don't know exactly how much later after Enosh is born that this is, but it's probably 2,000 years. Okay? And he's standing on the walls of Jerusalem, looking at the state of Jerusalem and lamenting. All right? Because Jerusalem is filled with evil men doing evil things with no consequence. All right? So this isn't a book of prophecy. This isn't a book where Habakkuk hears something from God and proclaims it to everybody else in the city. This literally is just a conversation between the prophet Habakkuk and God himself. All right? And it's a series of complaints, really, that he gives to God. All right? And basically what Habakkuk is wrestling with is, God, here are the things that you've told me. Here are the things that you've promised us, and here is reality. And it feels like these things never match. Like you tell us this, but this is happening. At what point do these things begin to overlap? And you see all of the angst and all of the frustration that Habakkuk has with this, okay? And so we go to Habakkuk 1, starting in verse 2. It says, how long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you, violence, but you don't save? Why do you make me look at all the injustice? Why do you tolerate wrongdoing? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife and conflict abounds. Therefore, the law is paralyzed and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous so that justice is perverted. It's a complaint about how certain people in Jerusalem are conducting themselves and that they're getting away with evil. Now, we feel that. We feel that. Sometimes we see it in the news, but sometimes we feel it in our own lives. Sometimes, if you're a Christian, if you're a true Christian, then the higher road is always the road. There's no other road. You always have to take the higher road. Which means at work, if people are gossiping, you don't participate. And at work, if people are acting in a way towards you to make you look bad in front of your boss, you don't retaliate. The honorable path is oftentimes a silent path. It's one without recompense. It's one without revenge. It's one without any vengeance. And so Christians oftentimes get walked on. All right? And there is a side to it when you are the one that is consistently getting walked on. You feel like, God, what the heck? Like, I'm not taking revenge on this person. I'm not trying to make them look bad in return for making them having me look bad. I'm trying to do what's right. Why don't you stick up for me? We feel that. In the book by the prophet Hosea, which is a book about the last days of the northern kingdom. Okay, so Habakkuk is about the southern kingdom, where Jerusalem is. Hosea is a book about the northern kingdom, and it's the last days of the northern kingdom, right before the Assyrians sweep down and destroy the northern kingdom. God's answer to Hosea for all the injustice of the northern kingdom is that I'm sending the Assyrians. All right, now that was not an answer Hosea wanted to hear. Hosea wanted God, his solution was, God, you come into Jerusalem and take care of the evil people. And God said, no, I'm sending evil people to take care of the evil people. All right, when you read the book of Jonah, Jonah's the man who was swallowed by the whale. All right, Jonah did not want to do his mission because it was to the Assyrians. And he knew that if he went to the Assyrians and he preached and the Assyrians repented, that God would have mercy on them. And God didn't want him to have mercy on the Assyrians because Jonah probably knew that one day the Assyrians were going to destroy his people. The Assyrians were terrible. So now we have Habakkuk. It's kind of a similar prayer. All right? And God is about to give a similar answer. So Habakkuk chapter 1 and verse 5 says this. This is God's answer to Habakkuk. Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed. For I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe even if you were told. I am raising up the Babylonians, that ruthless and impetuous people who sweep across the whole earth to seize dwellings not their own. They are a feared and dreaded people. They are a law unto themselves. They promote their own honor. Their horses are swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves at dusk. Their cavalry gallops headlong. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swooping to devour. They all come intent on violence. Their hordes advance like a desert wind and gather prisoners like sand. They mock kings and scoff at rulers. They laugh at all fortified cities. By building earthen ramps, they capture them. Then they sweep past the wind and go on. Guilty people whose own strength is their God. What probably continues here is the longest awkward pause in the Bible. Can you imagine for a second, like you pray to God? Let's say you have a boss that's just terrible, just a terrible boss. Skims off your wages, finds some way to blackmail you, has you do all the dirty work, makes you come in early, takes credit for your work. You pray to God, God, you got to take care of this guy. And he goes, I got you, don't worry. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a biker gang. All right? And the Hell's Angels are now going to be your bosses. And you're like, well, okay. He's like, no, I'm taking care of the evil. All right? And that does take care of the evil, but that doesn't take care of you. All right? And this is something that Habakkuk is now having to wrestle with. God is doing what he asks. He's taking care of the evil, but he's not really taking care of Habakkuk. All right? This was not the answer that Habakkuk was hoping for. I'm sure that what would have been preferable was like a surgical angel strike on all the evil people instead. All right? Instead, the Babylonians are going to come and everyone is going to be punished. And this doesn't sit right with the prophet. That didn't feel like justice to him. You know, God's ways are sometimes so incomprehensible from our vantage point. You know, and we see, if we're lucky, we see a 76-year keyhole into the entirety of God's plan. That's it. He sees all the keyholes for all time and all future as well. And he's planning to save as many as possible. All right? And that sometimes doesn't advantage us. That sometimes doesn't advantage the people that we love. We just don't see the entire tapestry of the past, present, and future at the same time. God sees it and understands it. We each are living out one life in one linear direction from birth to death, and we can barely comprehend that. We barely know what's happening to us. Like, if you ask me what I feel at any given point, it's like I short circuit. I have no idea. I need like 3 days to answer this question. All right? We definitely can't comprehend what would be best for the entire planet. All right? His plans are to redeem all of creation with that kind of knowledge in his mind. That being said, it's sometimes hard for us to accept what happens to us and those around us. I understand more fully Habakkuk's complaint to God. You know, God, we have unrighteousness among your people. Why punish those who are sinful by using people like the Babylonians, who are the worst people that are going to end up hurting not just the unrighteous, but also your most faithful? This doesn't seem like a plan worthy of God, who can't stand injustice or evil. But now he's going to use such things to punish the people and to hurt the people that he loves. God gives his answers to these thoughts. And it applies to us as well when we ask whether what happens to us is fair or makes sense. Habakkuk chapter 2. I will stand at my watch and station myself on the ramparts. I will look to see what he will say to me and what answer I am to give to this complaint. Then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that the herald may run with it. For the revelation awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it. It will certainly come, and it will not delay. What is God's answer? Wait. You want to know why this is happening? Wait. You have to wait for it. God is going to make all things right. He sees all injustice. He sees the innocent suffer. He sees the oppressor. He sees the liar. He sees the fake, and he's coming for all of them. But the righteous have to wait, because he's going to make all things right again. God goes into great detail about how he will settle things up with those who cheat, those who steal, those who murder, those who lie, those who plot injustice, the greedy, etc., etc. No one escapes what's coming for them, and it is coming. And though he will use Babylon to accomplish his punishment in this story, they also will not go unpunished. But more important than how is God's view of making all things right at the appointed time. So the righteous must learn to wait. Now, why is this an important aspect in our series about formation? Why is waiting a part of formation? Because for some reason, some of our most important growth happens while we're waiting. We learn to be at peace. Waiting often exposes the reality of how much we really do or do not trust God. Do we really have faith in him? In the space between hoping for a specific outcome and discovering what the outcome actually, how it unfolds, is the measure of so many things about you as an individual. Did I get the job? What is the medical test going to tell me? Did my child make the team? Does the person I like me? What is the response to the controversial email that I just wrote and sent? The light turned green. Why is the first car not moving? We aren't always good at waiting on God or trusting Him. And as a result of not being able to wait, we fill our lives with frenetic activity in an attempt to control outcomes. We call teachers and we call coaches to ensure that our children get what we think they should have. I've coached for 15 years now. The manipulation of parents is unparalleled. Parents complain about politicians. We should replay every conversation they've tried to have with a coach over the course of their parenting or a teacher. When their child doesn't get what they think they should have gotten, parents manipulate the system every which way they can to make sure that their kids get what they should get, what they think they should get. They push, and they don't trust. I can't tell you how many dads I've talked to who think their kid is going to be a professional athlete. They're not. They're not. Your kid's not going to be a professional athlete. Maybe he'll play in college. Maybe. And you know what? When he gets to college, that coach, he won't care about you. There's no pressure that you can put on him. All right? And in the meantime, what your child has learned is 20 years of being an absolute brat who can no longer cope with the world. I'm going on a tangent now. I'm sorry. It just came out of me. I'm sorry. It's the Holy, we'll call that the Holy Spirit. We don't like to wait. We badger customer service and push them to do the things that we think we're owed. We incessantly call friends and family to tell our side of the story in a conflict in order to marshal our army for the fight ahead. We check our email every 5 minutes to see if we got a response. And all of it makes us feeble and anxious and harried and unhappy people. And beyond that, weak. We're weak. We don't have the strength to carry the weight. We don't have the strength to wait. We don't have the strength to do what our faith dictates us to do, and the world is watching it. And it tells a story about whether our faith is real or whether it's just an ideology. You know, we've got to do a better job of teaching our kids this. You know, you got to let your kids fail, period. You got to let them make mistakes. You got to let them look bad and in turn make you look bad. Your kids are going to make you look bad. They are. They are. They're jerks. They are. Listen, if a teacher has gotten the nerve up to tell you something about your kid, it's true. They're not making it up. They may not explain it in all the articulation that you would like, but it's true. They don't have it out for your kid. They don't need that. They want to go home. They want peace. They don't want a conflict with you. They don't want a conflict with your kid. If they've gotten to the point of talking to you, something's wrong with your kid. All right? And we come up with all sorts of narratives for why that can't possibly be true. Don't be foolish. Don't be an idiot. You complain about your own kids. All right? But when we cannot wait for our kids to just grow up, when we can't just endure their mistakes and allow them to make them mature naturally, don't plow the field in front of them. Let them make their mistakes. Let them look bad. Let them make you look bad. Then they will grow up. Give them grace and let them make their mistakes. And when the teacher tells you how awful your kid is, you just look at them and go, I know. What can I do to help? What do you think? What suggestions do you have? Just to ask that question. All right? But we've got to raise a generation of people that will turn into actual adults. And in order for that to happen, you have to wait for it. You can't make them into the people they need to become. You have to wait for it. We have to practice waiting without trying to control things. We have to practice waiting and being at peace while we wait. Wait without irritation or agitation. Wait with confidence. You know, but like all things we've discussed, it's a discipline that takes time. You're not going to be able to just do it overnight. So start small. Like here, try this. Try ordering something and then not looking when it's going to arrive. Like order something from Amazon and just have no idea when it's going to arrive. All right? Don't look for the date. Don't look ever. Just when it shows up, it shows up. And be content with that. Learn to just be okay not knowing. All right? Just try that one. We're starting small. All right? How about this? Don't binge watch a show. Just watch one episode a week like we all used to have to do. Just watch one. Just one. And then go read a book after that episode. For the love of God, open a book at some point. But just watch one and then wait. Just wait. You know, again, don't check your phone when you wake up. Don't. Just leave it off. Go somewhere and think for a little bit. Go look out a window. Go be bored for a little bit. Just remember what it was like to be bored, not having constant stimulus. You know, neurologists say that boredom is a crucial aspect of developing empathy. If you're not bored, you have a hard time developing empathy. You know what you do when you're bored? You think about what answer you should have given to the question of what dinosaur are you? You think about the conversations you had and what you wish you would have said. You actually begin to think what the other person might have actually meant rather than how you took it, how they might have felt. We need boredom. Just wait. These are small things, but you know what? We build on small things. As a matter of fact, you begin to find joy in the waiting. You know, family vacations, I love family vacations. You know, some of the most fun parts of family vacations is the build up to the family vacation. It's the days and the weeks leading up to it and the joy of what we might do. You know, there's joy in expectation, in connecting with God while we wait. I think when we're waiting for something, God comes nearer. I think the veil that separates us from Him thins when we have to wait. In learning to wait in these small ways, we prepare ourselves to wait in the big things to come. When we have to wait for test results from a doctor, the phone call in the middle of the night, the follow-up to the dream job interview. Then at those big moments, you'll be able to call upon this discipline of waiting and really draw near to God and find greater peace. The righteous must learn to come to terms with God's timing. But the thing is, the righteous always learn to come to terms with it. It's the unrighteous that have a problem with it over the course of their life. The righteous learn. They know God. They understand who God is, and they trust Him. And the book of Habakkuk demonstrates this. You know, it's about a righteous man struggling and eventually coming to terms with God's ways and His timing. Habakkuk 3 verse 1 says this, a prayer of Habakkuk the prophet, Lord, I have heard of your fame. I stand in awe of your deeds, Lord. Repeat them in our day. In our time, also make them known. In wrath, remember mercy. You drop down to verse 16. I heard and my heart pounded. My lips quivered at the sound. Decay crept on my bones and my legs trembled. Yet I will wait patiently for the day of calamity to come and the nation invading us. Though the fig tree dies and does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails and the fields produce no fruit, though there are no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in God my Savior. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer or a velociraptor, which is what I should have said. He enables me to tread on the heights. So much of life does not accommodate our own planning and our own timeline. And like Habakkuk, we go to God hurt and confused and angry about what we see and what we feel. And God will always answer by fixing it. Of course, He's going to fix it. But perhaps not in our day. Perhaps not when we want. And I hope that we can be noble about that. I pray that we would show the meaning of virtue and faith while we wait upon God. That in the face of suffering, we sing. That we flash smiles and we still laugh. That we demonstrate our hope as something not hollow, but as something that permeates into our thinking of how we act, even as hardship and tragedy hit us, as it will with all people. Though the fig tree does not bud, and there are no grapes on the vines, though the olive crop fails, and the fields produce no food, though there is no sheep in the pen and no cattle in the stalls, yet I will rejoice in the Lord, and I will be joyful in God my Savior. Redemption is coming for all creation. The faithful must find their confidence in this fact. Even if they have to stand upon the walls and shout out complaints to God, they must in the end learn to wait patiently for Him. And that's it. There's no cure, there's no easy remedy. It's almost unsatisfying in that God's answer gives no secret to unlock all the angst that we feel. Waiting is the answer. And a lot happens to us when we're forced to wait. It forces us to think, to examine ourselves, to wrestle intensely, and even to suffer. And in this waiting, where no answers or reprieve seems to come, we grow strong. We get wiser. We begin to see things perhaps we didn't see before. We acclimate and we surrender, and we become more content with less. And we are being formed into the person God created us to be. Amen. Thank you very much.